19th century American education is often referred to as the Common School period. It was during this century that education went from being completely private to being available to the common masses. In the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, it was stated that schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. 200 years later, the advocates of the Common School movement of 1840 proposed that public schools should be accountable to local school boards and state governments. Michigan was a leader in the field of public education in the 19th century. Michigan went from a completely centralized control of education to a totally decentralized approach under the Education Act of 1817. School districts in each township had a moderator, a director, an assessor, and 3 school inspectors. The Union Congress managed the school funds and the disposal of lands. Income derived from the sale of Section 16 in each township, and the university lands as well as other federal lands were used in education. States also collected tax for education, like levy taxes and a tax for suitable library case. It was $10 per year for purchase of books. Money and school lands were the most important prerequisite for Michigan education system. In the Constitution of 1835 in Michigan, Isaac E. Crary of Marshall prepared the Article for Education, which is known as Article X. It provided ideas of how Michigan's school system should be set up. The article included Superintendent of Public Instruction, appoint term, perpetual fund for support schools, common school system, yearly term, libraries, and university funds. It also safeguards the land so the federal government would grant the state for education and to prevent the use of the proceeds to be used for other purposes. In addition to Crary, there were other unforgettable contributors of setting up the Michigan education system, such as John Pierce and Henry Barnard. In 1893, Pierce created a system of tax-supported public schools in which no primary school student would be required to pay tuition.
There are 2 men who are well known for the making and establishing of education in Michigan. These 2 men are John Pierce and Isaac Crary. Neither of them were born and raised in Michigan, but later on in their lives, they both ended up in this state and began something huge that would change lives completely. John Davis Pierce was born in February 18th of 1797 in Chesterfield, New Hampshire. Later on in his life, he attended Brown University and graduated in the year of 1822. Pierce taught briefly before attending Princeton Theological Seminary. Then later, in 1825, he became an ordained minister of the Congregational Church, and then a pastor in Sangerfield, New York, and Goshen, Connecticut. Later on, though, he lost his job in the late 1820s. John Pierce is known to be the establisher of the Michigan public school system, but he at first started out traveling to Michigan as a missionary, but then later planned a public education system as they planned to enter statehood, and subsequently appointed Michigan's first superintendent of public instruction from the years 1836 to 1841. He coordinated the state's elementary schools, created school districts with individual libraries, set professional qualifications for teachers, and sold public land for public education. Another gentleman named Isaac Crary was born in Preston, Connecticut, where he then attended the public schools and graduated from Trinity College in his first class in the year of 1827. During this time, he was also assistant editor of the New England Weekly Review. He moved to Marshall, Michigan later on in the year 1833, as did John Pierce at an earlier time. With John Pierce, Isaac Crary wrote the education article of the 1835 Constitution. Crary was appointed a member of the State Board of Education from the years 1820 to 1852. Both Crary and Pierce planned Michigan's public school system and established a separate Department of Education run by a superintendent introducing uniform schooling in Michigan. In the year of 1837, the legislature approved much of Pierce's bold course of action by establishing a primary school district in each township and obligating districts to file annual reports with the state superintendent. Districts paid taxes for the support of schools, while state funding came from school funds set up by Isaac Crary. Later on, advances soon appeared, land was being sold for schools, and by the year of 1839, there was over 44,000 students attending schools daily.
By 1860, a total of 4,087 school districts had been formed in Michigan, and the number of teachers were 7,921. Even though not all schools were free, 75% of the children between the age of 4 and 18 attended public schools in 1860.
Life as a teacher was very different back in the 1800s. They would keep journals and write in them talking about what they had to do as teachers and the rules that they had to follow going throughout the school year. We will now show a journal that was written by a teacher named Annabelle Smith going through her day-to-day life as a school teacher.